Looks like he will be keeping, and it goes to Ricky.
Oh,
And Ricky is not. Draws a couple extra cards. He'll be going down to 6.
yeah, mulliganing, especially game one against Jund, very difficult because they have Thoughtseize, Inquisition, Kozilek, Hymn to Torok. They have a number of ways to put pressure on your hand. So tough spot for Ricky here on the draw game one and now having to mulligan.
Yeah, a lot of times when we saw this Jund deck play out, we saw it last round in the top 8. We actually saw it in round 8, and we saw it in round 9. It actually took down a Stoneblade deck. Jund really is still a deck that operates on the principle of card of one for one, trading a card for another card. Ricky will be down a card here. That's going to put him at a significant disadvantage in this matchup.
Well, he's still a tempo deck. So Rug Delver is all about tempo. It's about really cycling through its deck, gaining this velocity, so it can keep seeing the cards it needs to see to keep functioning. But yeah, being down a card, particularly just against Jund, really because of the pressure that they can put on your hand, that's where we could see an issue. But again, Ricky could still get a draw of turn one Delver, which is sometimes good enough. Delver plus stays can sometimes be good enough, particularly against a deck like Jund. Not to mention Nimble Mongoose, another card that can be very good against Jund. So let's see if Ricky's 6-card hand is a suitable replacement.
Yeah, of note, unlike Shahar, Ricky does not have the true name Nemesis in the main deck. We saw Shahar playing 1 in the main there. He is just on your typical 12 creatures, the 4 Mongoose, the 4 Delver, and the 4 Tarmogoyf.
So it looks like Ricky does have land to work with. So I'm not sure if he's debating if he wants to keep or not, but it looks like, yeah, he is going to keep. And now Cory's going to lead with a Verdant
Yeah.
Catacombs and a main phase sack of the Verdant
Yeah, we
Catacombs.
are underway. Cory with the main phase Verdant Catacombs. Could be a Deathrite Shaman, could be one of his many 1-mana disruption spells. We will see what he goes for here. It's a little bit of a balance. He wants to make sure he does not get too many non-basics in this matchup.
Yeah, could be playing around Stifle. We've seen him do that as well several times against Shahar, in both in the Swiss and in the top 8. So very wisely making sure that he sacrifices when Ricky doesn't have blue mana available so that he doesn't lose his land to Stifle.
All right, Fetchland is there, presents, and it looks like with the green mana, it looks like we're going to be seeing Deathrite Shaman on turn 1. And there's the culprit. Once again, the Fetchland into Deathrite Shaman. That very powerful draw from Jund on the play.
Yeah, one of the reasons people really the reason Jund became popular again, Deathrite Shaman, just such a force in Legacy.
All right, Ricky with his own signature 1-drop. That's going to be Delver of Secrets, which he plays off of Volcanic Island, but he has no removal spell for the Deathrite here. And we see a draw of Hymn to Turok, turn 2 for Cory Teran.
Wow, so Hymn to Torok there, again, with Ricky mulliganing to 6. Let's see if Cory's just going to cast Hymn to Torok here, playing around the days.
All right, we see the black. We see the land removed from the graveyard with Deathrite Shaman. It looks like it will be Hymn to Turok. A green is up, so it will be Daze Proof. Ricky with 5 cards in hand, about to lose 2 of them.
So this is the situation where, you mulligan to 6, and now you're facing down a Hymn to Torok. You're going to have to discard 2 cards at random. So Cory has to roll a 5. That's going to be the first card. That's one of the land. Let's see how much of a big deal that is, because Rug Delver only plays 18 lands. So wow,
2 lands
it's
there.
2 land. Is that the last 2 lands that Ricky had in his hand? I have to imagine there's a good chance, given the fact that Rug does not play him very many.
Well, it looks like Ricky actually kept a hand with a lot of lands in it. Those were all his colored lands. Looks like his remaining lands are wastelands. As you see, Cory is definitely playing around that. He has a basic swamp and a basic forest in play, so he will be wasteland proof for the time being.
Yeah, so Ricky missed the Delver trigger, so likely that is the Misty Rainforest is probably the card he drew for the turn. Let's see what his play is this turn. Could it be a Tarmogoyf? Tarmogoyf could help him kind of get a little more pressure on the board here.
Well, you see with that main phase sack, you expect Ricky to play a 2-mana spell. If he has a fetch land, he can keep it uncracked, and with Delver of Secrets, kind of check one of his draws for a Scry 1. I would expect him to tap out here, and
Oh, it looks like it might be a Nimble Mongoose is one of the options he has available to him. And he's thinking about what to do here. So, wow, could he have a hand of Tarmogoyf Nimble Mongoose? It's pretty important. Yeah, I know he has the Wasteland, so this could be Tarmogoyf Nimble Mongoose Wasteland. That's a pretty good
well, for a
mulligan.
mull to 5 that got hit by Hymn to Turok, it's hard to ask for too much more there. And you do see the Tarmogoyf. Right now, Tarmogoyf is a 2-3 with land and sorcery in the graveyard.
Wow, so really good start from Ricky, despite the fact that he mulliganed to 6 and faced down to him to Torok. So
Now, once again, we see one of those cards that in the last year has really kind of been a pink thorn in the side of Tarmogoyf, an Abrupt Decay waiting in Cory's hand.
And there are plenty of lands in Ricky's graveyard now because of the Hymn to Torok. So Deathrite Shaman's going to be able to activate for mana for a couple more turns here. Let's see if we see the signature card and Bloodbraid Elf come down. I don't know if he has it in his hand,
He's
or
going
are
to
we just
go.
going to see a removal spell here?
Looks like he's going to start on the removal spell. It's going to be
Oh,
Tarmogoyf of his own. Remember, he does still have the Abrupt Decay. Though it's not necessarily, he doesn't have to be in any rush, I'd say, to remove
yeah.
it. It is uncounterable.
I don't see a reason to cast Abrupt Decay just yet. If Delver flips, you're gaining more information anyway, and again, it's uncounterable, so why not get information?
Yeah, Cory does decide to wait, and Delver will flip off a Stifle. Stifle, a very powerful early game card, but on this board, could be a little weak.
Yeah, it could prevent Cory from getting a red land with the sack land that he has in his hand, but yeah, I agree with you. At this point of the game, Stifle, not that effective.
Yeah, Ricky also actually can take Cory off red mana for one turn. You actually can stifle the Deathrite Shaman's mana ability because if it has a target in its activation, it's not actually a mana ability by the rules.
Yes. So there is that Nimble Mongoose that Ricky did have in his hand. Now he has Wasteland Stifle left. We know Cory does have an Abrupt Decay, so he can cast Abrupt Decay on the Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, Wasteland will we target the Bayou here, and that'll just have to hit the graveyard for Cory. He's back down to just 2 lands.
So he doesn't want to use the Maelstrom Pulse on the Tarmogoyf, obviously, because that would destroy his own Tarmogoyf. So he's going to go after the Tarmogoyf with Abrupt Decay, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't just cast Maelstrom Pulse on the Delver of Secrets.
All right, so we do see that Tarmogoyf now all the way up to a 4/5 with creature, instant, sorcery, and land in the graveyard.
So, wow. So Cory does have a Wasteland, but he knows about the Stifle, so Wasteland not really effective right here.
Yeah, we see that Maelstrom Pulse you're talking about. It's the Grand Prix art on there. And he did draw the Wasteland for the turn. He may use the Wasteland anyway just to get the card out of Ricky's hand. I mean, it doesn't seem like he has another play waiting for him.
Well, he has Maelstrom Pulse. I like just playing Badlands, casting Maelstrom Pulse on the Delver of Secrets, and attacking with the Tarmogoyf. If you know what the card in Ricky's hand is, it's just a Stifle, so there's really not much to think about here.
So you don't want to remove a land. You don't want to use the Deathrite mana this turn.
No, I don't think you need to. Because if Ricky ever just taps out, then you can use the Wasteland. But why just throw away a land here? I don't understand it.
Well, why are we going about this? That is currently the 6th card in Ricky's graveyard, so Cory probably will maybe want to just remove a land anyway to make sure that Nimble Mongoose stays a 1/1. So if you're already committed to removing a card from Ricky's graveyard,
But
the activation with Deathrite is fine.
But if you just play a Badlands and deal with the Delver of Secrets,
you can still
then
remove a land
you can
anyway
still
if you
remove
want
it.
to.
So, yeah, I don't quite understand not casting Maelstrom Pulse there.
Yeah, it looks like he wants to save the pulse right now, so it
He's
wasn't
not winning
cast.
this race, that's for sure.
So we see the draw from Ricky. It's a 1 mana card. Looks like it's going to be a Lightning Bolt for the Deathrite Shaman, and that's a huge play. Because it will be the 7th card in Ricky's graveyard. So in response, Cory's going to go ahead and eat the Stifle to make sure that Lightning Bolt is only the 6th card. So Nimble Mongoose will stay a 1/1 at least for one more turn. And we see a swing now for 4 from Ricky. That'll put Cory down to 11.
So Cory now, without that Deathrite Shaman, it's going to be hard for him to win this race here. Not sure what he plans on doing. He did draw a Dark Confidant for the turn, so he can try to put that into play and hope that Ricky bricks on either a cantrip or a sack land to make sure he doesn't get Threshold. But
yeah, well, he does still have the 3rd land in hand, and now we will see Maelstrom Pulse take care of Insectile Aberration. So right now, life totals are 9 for Ricky, 11 for Cory. Ricky with a 3/3 hexproof, Cory with a 4/5 Tarmogoyf.
yeah, so still good shape for Cory. Tarmogoyf can eventually block if he needs to, but Ricky is currently losing the race now because of that Maelstrom Pulse.
Yeah, Cory is at 8, so he has a 3-turn clock. Ricky's at 9, that's also a 3-turn clock. However, Cory's going to be the first attack, so it is a 1-turn difference. But then again, Rug plays a lot of cards like Lightning Bolt that really can turn around a race when it's only 1 turn off.
Yeah, but good news for Cory, he did draw a Wasteland, so I think he should have Wastelanded first. You play the Wasteland, take out that Volcanic Island, and shut off any of those burn spells you mentioned.
Yeah, he's going to play that Wasteland post-combat, and he will go ahead at the red source. So Ricky down to just a tropical island now.
And now he could play the Dark Confidant, but he decides not to.
Yeah, it looks like he doesn't want to risk turning that race around. Right now, he would, if the race continues as planned, he would win the game at 4 life. The Dark Confidant, I suppose, could deal 4 damage over 2 turns.
Yeah, the problem with that plan, though, is if Cory does just play the Dark Confidant, the worst card he could flip is a Bloodbraid Elf, but then he just attacks with both creatures. Cory's forced to block
Right.
the Tarmogoyf anyway.
All right, a swing from Cory puts Ricky down to 1. Land from Cory Teran. So 7 and 1 are life totals. Can Ricky draw out of this?
Looks like he drew a Nimble Mongoose here, so he could attack with the Nimble Mongoose and play another one here.
Yeah, remember he can't actually fetch for anything. He has drawn a Force of Will since then, so that's going to be a pretty dead card. He can never actually cast it because he's at 1 life. And as you said, Nimble Mongoose, the draw for the turn.
So he could just pass here, and now he has a way to double block Tarmogoyf. Let's see if Cory's able to draw something. At this point, now Cory has to play the Dark Confidant. So something he could have played several turns ago, he's now basically in a position where he has to play it now. Because he can't just keep sitting here and allowing Ricky to draw out of this.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and do that. He is giving Ricky some extra turns. If he plays the Dark Confidant there, he can actually just swing the Confidant and Tarmogoyf next turn and basically trade a Confidant for a Nimble Mongoose if he's worried about the flip.
I think he's being a little too conservative here. Ricky doesn't have any red mana, and you're basically
another fetch land.
You're basically giving Ricky just way too much time. Here's a Brainstorm, and
yeah, Ricky could find something here. We see a Wasteland, a Scalding Tarn, and a Stifle drawn. Now, the Scalding Tarn not really a card here. Remember, Ricky can't crack a fetch.
Yeah, so Rug Delver doesn't really have a way to deal with a Tarmogoyf once it's in play, but he can draw Fire Ice. So he could tap the Tarmogoyf and then attack with both Nimble Mongooses, bringing Cory down to 1. So Cory has to be careful here not to crack a sack land and bring himself below 7.
Yeah, and that's what we see. Ricky wastelanded Cory's only red mana. Cory will have access to more red mana, but it would make him go to 6 if he wanted it. And both players just trading draws. Cory drawing land after land. Ricky drawing those cards he put back off Wasteland, off Brainstorm. The Brainstorm, basically, he locked himself because he has no ways to shuffle in his deck when he's only at 1 life.
Yeah, so let's see here. Ricky does have a Stifle in his hand. He's debating whether or not he should use the Stifle on the sack land. One option for Ricky is to use it on activation of Liliana the Veil, if that is something that Cory has.
Yeah, well, this is a fetch land crack here. We will see with what happens with Ricky's. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It was a punishing fire drawn by Cory. So Cory Teran takes the first game and is up a game in the semis here against Ricky Sidher.
Yeah, so Ricky wasn't really able to get anything going. It looked good for him despite a mulligan to 6 and then him to Torok. He was able to get a couple of creatures into play, but eventually a timely Wasteland from Cory and a couple of removal spells put him back in the driver's seat, and he was able to close out that game.
All right, so we are back in the booth here. We are in the top 4, which means in the middle of the round we are going to do a trivia once again. This time, though, it will be for 6 months of Star City Games Premium. So the rules are, we're going to ask you a question, and you have to tweet the correct answer to us with the hashtag SCGPremium on that tweet. At the end of the round, we will select any one of the correct tweets, and that person will receive 6 free months of Star City Games Premium. So, anyway, going back to trivia, we have a question ready for you. We are looking at the deck list. We've seen Cory Teran on camera a couple of times with his Jund deck list, playing against Shahar Shinar, now in the feature match against Ricky Sidher. We are looking for what card, which is a 1-of in the main deck. We're looking for what removal spell. It is a what black-green 3-mana removal spell is a 1-of in his main deck. So if you can get the correct answer for that, please tweet that answer at SCG Live with the hashtag SCGPremium.
Yes, and again, speed doesn't matter, only accuracy. So take your time, think of the right answer. The deck lists are online if you don't know the answer to that, although it should be fairly obvious if you watch that game.
Yes.
It was cast early on in that game, so that is a hint.
All right.
But yeah, looking at the sideboards here, Ricky, again, I think he's much better prepared for Jund than Shahar was. He's got 3 copies of Submerge, 1 copy of Life from Loam, and 2 copies of True Name Nemesis. Those are 6 cards that could easily bring in swapping out 4 copies of Force of Will along with the 2 copies of Spell Pierce in his main deck. So all of a sudden, his deck becomes much more proactive and kind of fits that tempo theme that Rug Delver really wants to be in.
Yeah, on Cory's side of the board, he does have some extra removal that he can use. We have seen in the past he has brought in cards like Diabolic Edict in the matchup. He has brought in Pyroblast to deal with some of the blue cards out of Ricky's deck. But he will have more things to deal with. Like we saw, you said a second true name Nemesis in Ricky's deck will really put pressure on Cory to have a Pyroblast or one of those edicts when it's cast.
Yeah, I don't like again. I don't like him to Torek in this matchup, um, and I'm not also in love with Maelstrom Pulse either. It's a for a 3 mana removal spell. It's a little clunky in this matchup, so I can see boarding those out. Again, the Pyroblast is definitely good, along with the Diabolic Edict. So, and we've seen him bring in those 5 cards. We've also seen him bring in a Scavenging Ooze before. So, I wouldn't be surprised if those 6 cards are the only 6 cards that come in, and maybe he takes out the Hymn to Torek, maybe one Maelstrom Pulse and maybe a couple of copies of Dark Confidant. Maybe he cuts one of the Blood Raid Elves because, again, it's 4 mana, might be a lot, especially if you're on the draw and facing down Stifles and Wastelands. So, um, a lot of options here for Cory, but one card he definitely can't take out is Liliana the Veil.
Yeah, Liliana the Veil's he one does probably can't take out any of the ways that he has to deal with True Name Nemesis,
Yep.
just because if a True Name Nemesis is in play, it's pretty hard for Cory to answer, and one of you either have to kill it or ignore it. It's hard for Cory to ignore it because while his deck is powerful and great at grinding, it doesn't really control the pacing of its own wins. You know, he can't just win very quickly and ignore a true name nemesis. Like some of his draws may let him do that, but he doesn't have very much control over that.
Yeah, he does have 2 Golgari Charms in his sideboard, and that is a card that people have started playing in order to deal with the True Name Nemesis threat. However, he's playing against Rug Delver, which doesn't really have as many copies of True Name Nemesis as some other decks out there, and it doesn't really kill much else. You could get lucky and kill a Nimba Mongoose or maybe even a Delver of Secrets, but I haven't seen him cast it yet, although that is a card that Shahar was telling me after his top 8 loss that he said he was afraid of losing to, so it's certainly possible Cory might end up bringing in the Golgari Charms as well.
Yeah, we did see in the past. So Cory, when he's sideboard in this matchup before, has kept in Bloodbraid Elves in the matchup. So I do think it's him to Truax. These traditionally been boarding out in the matchup.
Yeah, and if he's bringing those Golgari Charms, then maybe it's likely he's just going to board out Dark Confidant. Dark Confidant, again, he didn't even end up casting it in the... although, no, I have seen him play it against Shahar, so I know he does keep in at least a couple of copies of Dark Confidant.
Yeah, the damage that Dark Confidant does usually is still worth the spells he draws because he's a threat in addition to being a card draw. You know, it's rare that he will do more damage to you than he'll do to your opponent.
Yeah, so both players are definitely going to be have some interesting options available to them after sideboard. I think Ricky's deck is probably a little bit better positioned for the matchup than Cory. Cory, obviously, being Jund, he needs to have a lot more cards across a wider variety of deck. Rug Delver can generally be a little more streamlined. It has a lot of cards in its sideboard that can attack multiple different decks at the same time. Whereas Cory, you know, cards like Golgari Charm can be a little bit narrow. One Scavenging Ooze is a little bit random of a card to have in there. But again, I think both players, if I had to give the edge after board, I'd say Rug Delver has a slight edge just because Submerge can be so good in this matchup.
Yeah, we're gonna see at least for game 2, this will be the most difficult game for Cory. It's the one game where he gets to where Ricky gets to be on the play. Remember though, because Cory's the 1 seed, even though he's in a field full of Delver, one of these Delvers, the Delver decks will not get to be on the play twice against him in any match.
Yeah, so again, I think after board, Ricky's deck has a slight advantage, but he's only going to be on the play once. And again, being on the play can be a huge benefit for the Jund player. So even if Ricky does win game 2, he might be find himself struggling to win the 3rd game.
All right. All right, so as these players prepare for Game 2, the other match we have in our semifinals is also preparing for Game 2. Jacob Wilson in Blue, White, Red Delver takes Game 1 from Vinnie Gorman and his Rug Delver deck.
And I think we kind of expected that. I think Cedric Phillips brought this up before. If someone like Jacob Wilson stops playing Rug Delver, that kind of is a sign to you that maybe you shouldn't be playing Rug Delver. Despite the fact that 3 players did make the top 8 with the deck, maybe it's really not that well positioned against a field full of true name nemesis.
Yeah, we did see that Jacob Wilson won a Legacy Open just a month and a half ago in Seattle with Rug Delver, looking to take another Legacy Open. And we are underfoot, though, here in our match of Ricky versus Cory. Turn 1 is a Volcanic Island and a Ponder from Ricky Sidher.
Yeah, so both players keep. Ricky doesn't have that turn 1 Delver, but he's got a little action in Ponder. It looks like he also has a Daze in his hand, so he could potentially stop a Deathrite Shaman if that does come down.
All right, passing back to Cory. He will likely have a 1-drop. We'll see whether it's Disruption or a Deathrite.
Yeah, and Cory did think about mulliganing this hand, so interesting to see whether or not it's land light or not,
So,
because a lot of these decks, they're hesitant to keep land light hands against the Rug, obviously, because of Wasteland and Stifle.
so I want to go over there. What does it tell you if you're on Ricky's side of the board when Cory, in his opening 7, draws an 8th card and then thinks for about 10 to 15 seconds before even making a land drop?
Well, there's a lot of decisions that this deck has to make. I mean, it could be Thoughtseize, it could be Inquisition, it could be Deathrite Shaman. The thing is, though, in almost every situation, you want to lead with Deathrite Shaman, simply because it's just so powerful. Obviously, you expose yourself a little bit to Lightning Bolt if you can lead with a removal spell, but a disruption spell. But I don't know. We'll see what Cory's decision is here.
Does it show you that he's making a choice? That means he has more than one option at one?
No, sometimes he's just protecting himself around Stifle, which is what we see here. But again, it's odd that he's done that. He's done that because in almost every other game, he usually goes for a basic land and protects himself against Wasteland. So it's one of those things where you don't want to sacrifice a land when your opponent has mana up because you don't want to play around Stifle. But at the same time, you don't want to get a non-basic because you're playing right into Wasteland.
Right, so Ricky on his turn wastes away the Bayou, plays Delver of Secrets, and this card does not flip the Delver, so he goes ahead and draws that there.
Yeah, but Ricky does have another Ponder here, so that will be able to try to set up a Delver flip for next turn.
I was going to say, I thought that Delver was set up from the previous Ponder. It turns out Ricky didn't have the instant to do that with on his first Ponder.
So, wow, Ricky actually has a pretty bad 3 cards there. He has 2 lands and 1 instant, and these are the types of hands I hated when I was playing Delver because I'm like, okay, well, I can technically set up my Delver flip, but I really don't want any of these cards. So you can see Ricky here is thinking, these cards are so bad. Should I just shuffle and take my chances next time with Delver? Again, he does have a high spell count in his deck. He has 30 spells.
It's already a coin flip just to flip it on any given turn.
Yeah, but nope. Ricky just wants to make sure it flips, so he keeps Misty Rainforest on top and draws it for the turn. I don't know what the spell is, but I think it might have been a Stifle.
So what Ricky can do here, you see that he played a Misty Rainforest, is next turn he can reveal the instant, flip the Delver, but then before he draws the instant, he could crack the fetch land if those 2 cards he left are truly bad.
Yep. So Cory Teran draws for the turn. It looks like it was an Inquisition of Kozilek, so he can lead with the Inquisition of Kozilek here if he wants to kind of gain a little more information and try to set up his next turn.
Yeah, he has a Badlands. No green mana yet. We do see he has a Tarmogoyf, but is unable to play it. He's going to go for Punishing Fire to take down the Delver of Secrets right now.
And I'd expect that to be met the Daze. So yeah, Ricky's going to return to Volcanic Island and Daze that Punishing Fire.
And as we know, Cory actually does have a Grove of the Burn Willows in hand, so next turn he'll be able to repeat that play if he wants.
So there's the Stifle, and let's see if he's going to make the play where he sacks prior to draw.
Yeah, he's thinking about it here. Delver does flip into Insectile Aberration.
Yeah, let's see here. Obviously, Stifle not that effective, but with only 2 lands, you could still get a 3rd land, which could be important if he has Liliana the Veil. So I kind of like keeping the Stifle there. Again, your plan is to land destruction your opponent. So, especially if he has a Wasteland. So,
oh wow! All right,
that's huge there. And Ricky deciding he wants to make sure he doesn't sack the Misty Rainforest yet, just to make sure if Cory has a Wasteland.
Yeah, remember there are no basics in Rug Delver. In fact, there are only 6 mana-producing lands outside of the Wastelands in the deck. It's 3 tropical, 3 volcanic.
Yeah, along with 8 sack lands. So, Cory now down to just 1 basic swamp. He does have that Grove of the Burn Willows. But it's difficult to get the Grove combo going if you don't have 3 mana. So it looks like Cory will be able to eventually deal with that Delver of Secrets if he has that Grove of the Burn Willows, but it will take at least 1 turn.
All right, so we're back on Cory Teran. We know he has a Grove. We don't know if he has any more lands. He does have at least 1. It's going to be Marsh Flats, but he knows that there's a Stifle waiting for him if he goes for it.
Yeah. So he's in a tough spot here. I think he has to lead with the Grove of the Burn Willows and just get back that Punishing Fire.
Yeah, well, he actually has he's shuffled a Pyroblast to the front of his hand, so he can just play Grove and Pyroblast away the Delver.
Yeah, but I kind of like just playing Grove of the Burning Willows, casting Inquisition of Kozilek, and then getting
Sure.
you're at 15, so it's not like you're at 3. You don't need to waste a Pyroblast on a Delver of Secrets when you have a Punishing Fire in your graveyard.
Yeah, well, he's going to go. I think he's going to weigh his options here. He's going to start with the Inquisition of Kozilek. He plays the Grove first, so he's playing around Days. He sees the hand. It is Volcanic Island, Vendilion Click, Fire Ice, and Stifle.
So yeah, that's great there for Cory. He can take the Fire Ice because with with the Pyroblast in his hand, along with the Punishing Fire in his graveyard, I don't think he's too afraid of the Vendilion Click. So I think Punishing Fire is probably the card to take here, unless he really needs that sack land and he wants to just take the Stifle. So let's see here. Inquisition of Kozilek, he's going to decide what he wants to take. And Vendilion Click is a card that Ricky was saying he really likes in this matchup. Even though it costs 3 mana, it is kind of a useful threat. You can cast it at instant speed, and you could also cast it at the end of the turn if they play a Liliana of the Veil, and down tick it, you'll still be able to attack and kill the Liliana of the Veil.
Yeah, so he's going to go ahead. He's going to point at the Fire Ice.
So I think there might be a rule question as to whether or not you can take Fire Ice with an Inquisition of Kozilek.
Yeah, when you do flip a split card, for example, to a Dark Confidant, you take damage equal to both halves put together. That much is true. But right now I think there's a rules question on whether or not on the legality of that.
Yeah, so assuming you can take Fire Ice, I like the logic there because Stifle you can kind of play around eventually, and at the same time, if he has multiple lands in his hand, it doesn't really matter, but he wants to make sure that a card like Dark Confidant or Deathrite Shaman can live. So if he can take the Fire Ice, I like taking it here.
Yeah, agreed. Vendilion Click doesn't seem to be too big of a problem. I mean, Cory has Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burn Willows set up. Vendilion Click is a 3/1. It's not actually its ability may be a threat to him, but the 3/1 body is not very relevant.
Yeah, and this goes to show you how it's hard for Rug Delver to win without cards like Tarmogoyf or really Nimble Mongoose because all those cards are so easily answered. So it looks like the judge ruled that he could in fact take Fire Ice, but he decided against it and took the Stifle instead. So that goes to show me that the Marsh Flats in his hand is going to be important for him, and he wants to make sure that he can sacrifice it and get a land.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ricky is going to go ahead here. He cracks his fetch land. We are at the end of Cory's turn.
Yeah, so again, a really good draw here would be a Nimble Mongoose. He needs some other form of pressure, but it looks like he drew another Stifle. So that's actually a pretty good draw because Cory already handled one Stifle. He's never going to expect the second Stifle.
Yeah, we already know that in Cory's game plan, he was not very keen on Ricky having a Stifle.
Yeah, but again, I don't think it's that big of a concern. Again, he's going to get back to Punishing Fire here, and that will allow him, or we might see a Stifle activation.
Yeah, you can stifle the Punishing Fire trigger here.
And I think Cory would be very happy with that because then he could just play the Marsh Flats and then do the same thing next turn.
Yeah, and he does actually have a dot. Yeah, he can play. Yeah, he can just do it again next turn.
Yeah,
just use all his mana.
If Ricky does stifle it here and try to prevent the activation of returning Punishing Fire to your hand, then Cory's okay with that. Either way, though, Cory's in good shape here because Ricky doesn't have much action in his hand, and that Delver's Secrets is pretty easily answerable here.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a dance that has to go on here. Cory needs to be sure that the Punishing Fire never ends up in his hand when Ricky has enough mana to Vendilion Click it out of his hand. And Ricky's stifling the trigger on being able to get back Punishing Fire. That's what's going on here. So there's, before Cory has the option to pay for it or not, it is a trigger. So Cory would still actually have a red mana here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going over with the judge just to be sure of how this works. So Cory, he does have a red mana. Say if he wanted to Pyroblast right now, that would be something he could do.
Yeah, so, but again, it looks like he's moving it to the top, but really there's no reason to. If he just plays it safe, he can just untap and do the exact same thing next turn. You know what his hand is because he just cast a Stifle, so you know exactly what is in Ricky's hand. So if you should feel confident in just sacking that land, getting a Badlands or another red source, and then just bringing back the Punishing Fire and then killing the Delver now.
Yeah, you'd hate to use the Pyroblast there and then get True Name Nemesis on the next turn.
Yeah, well, you can't stop it because you're probably going to kill the you're probably going to just go after the Delver now because you know what's in Ricky's hand. You don't want to get that countered because at 11 life, you don't really want to take any more hits.
Right.
But either way, I think you don't want to expend a resource in Pyroblast if you don't have to.
Exactly. Time is a resource that's not as important right now. He can spend this extra mana here to just be more efficient with his cards.
Yeah, so let's see if he's going to activate Grow the Burn Wills. Ricky's going to gain a life, and he's going to use the red mana to bring back Punishing Fire. And let's see if he's just going to cast it this turn and deal with the Delver Secrets. He knows what's in Ricky's hand, so he knows it will resolve, and that's exactly what he does. So Delver Secrets dies to the Punishing Fire, and Cory's now going to pass the turn back to Ricky. Ricky is really desperate to find a threat here because we're almost at that turn 4, or the 4 mana for Cory, where Bloodbraid Elves starts showing up to the party.
All
It
right,
looks like
so
Ricky drew a Ponder, so he's got some action here.
yeah, he can dig for what he needs in this matchup, though he is starting to get hurt under this lock of Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burnwills. Probably the most important card for him to find at this moment would be Wasteland. We see Submerge, Tropical Island, and one more off the Ponder.
So that's not a bad Ponder. I mean, he can end up getting a Submerge out of it, and then he can dig a little bit more. He can draw the Brainstorm and then dig a little more, getting a Submerge. But he's only going to be able to dig one card deeper, so I'm not sure he can afford to keep these 3, given the fact that he really needs a threat here.
He needs a threat. There's a lot. He has a pretty big wish list. Like you said, he needs a threat. He really needs a Wasteland too. This Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burnwillows lock.
He needs
Wasteland. Needs to be disrupted.
Submerge is obviously good in this matchup, but it's really only good as a tempo play if you can press some sort of advantage, which Ricky clearly doesn't. So, despite the fact that it's a good card, I think he has to ship this back and reshuffle. There's just not enough going on here. Brainstorm is good, but it's only going to get him one card deeper.
And so he's going to keep it. He's going to take the...
Yeah, he's going to take the Brainstorm here. So now he has Brainstorm. He can play the Volcanic Island. Now he's just going to pass the turn. He's got Volcanic Mat. He's got a Fire Ice available to him now if he wants to.
Yeah, and I mean, while that is a slower line, pondering for Brainstorm always lets you see more cards. The worry is that if Ricky doesn't find a shuffle effect in those cards, he actually could Brainstorm lock himself on this one.
Yeah, so, no, I think he might have, I think there was a sack land there, so I think he'll be okay there. But Cory did draw a Hymn to Torak here, so very interesting decision here. He can go for the Hymn to Torak. If Ricky casts Brainstorm in response, he can then Pyroblast that and actually strip Ricky's entire hand.
That's very strong, especially when you know that Ricky has put, though he knows what those last 2 cards on top of his deck are, and they're not things that he's particularly excited about.
Yeah.
You'd strip his hand, and you'd know his next 2 draws would be weak. It'd be a pretty powerful place to be.
Yeah, and you have a Diabolic Edict in your hand, and you still have the Bloodbraid Elf, so it looks like that's what might happen here. If Ricky does have 3 cards in his hand, which I believe he does, if he tries to cast Brainstorm here, I think Cory's almost in all likelihood just going to Pyroblast it.
Let's see if he does. He looks like he's going to do exactly that. He's going to go for the Brainstorm. Is Cory going to let that happen? And
oh, wow.
Right away, yes.
He does let it resolve. Surprising.
Well, he really just seems to be saving that Pyroblast for a true name Nemesis, would be my guess here. Now, granted, by Pyroblasting the Brainstorm, he pretty much has already done that.
Okay, here. So, Ricky is going to reveal 3 cards. 2 of them are going to go here. And number 2 is a Submerge, so there's one of the action cards. And let's see what the other one is going to be. And it's another land, so Submerge is gone and a land is gone. So I think Ricky still has a Fire and Ice somewhere there. And I think Cory just can pass the turn here, really nothing else, unless he has a Tarmogoyf. But again, the way he's been playing this game, I agree with you. It looks like he wants to make sure that Pyroblast just hits a true name Nemesis.
Yeah, so Submerge wasn't too big of a resource for Ricky. We saw after the Brainstorm, the cards he had kept were a Fetch Land, a Tropical Island, and a Submerge. So the land he got to keep there actually was a Fetch Land. And we'll pay Ricky with no play passes back to Cory, and Cory's going to rebuy his Punishing Fire.
Wow. So there's that Vendilion Click, and again, I think Cory knew about that Vendilion Click. So, but here's the Pyroblast. That's right.
This has got to be the Pyroblast.
I completely forgot the Vendilion Click was in the hand. So yeah, here's the Pyroblast.
Yeah, we said there's that cat and mouse game that between this Vendilion Click and the Punishing Fire, where Cory needed to make sure he didn't end up on the wrong side of it. Ricky saw an opportunity and really did have to go for it here.
Yeah, but at the same time, had Cory just Pyroblast a Brainstorm, he would have been able to deal with the Vendilion Click and the Fire Ice that he knew was in Ricky's hand.
Yeah, this should work though. Pyroblast will take care of Annealing Click, so Cory will get to keep his Punishing Fire, and he has his combo intact. And I have to think that we may be seeing Bloodbraid Elf
Oh
or
no,
Liliana this
Liliana the Veil. Yeah.
turn. Oh,
Now, if he has a fifth land, he can go Liliana the Veil Tarmogoyf.
and it looks like he's gonna go with Bloodbraid Elf. So we're starting a cascade. Bloodbraid Elf will cascade.
He'll likely cascade into Liliana the Veil, given that he didn't cast his. I'd venture to guess. Oh
Into
no,
Deathrite
Deathrite
Shaman.
Shaman. So Bloodbraid Elf reveals Deathrite Shaman, and now Cory's going to be able to attack Bloodbraid down with attack Ricky down to 20, and Cory in a really dominating. He is just abusing Rug Delver decks all day.
Yeah, and we see just that strategy of 1 for 1ing in resources and then 2 for 1ing in the late game.
Yeah, so Ricky here really far behind. Even if he does draw a True Name Nemesis, Cory does have that Liliana the Veil, and he has plenty of mana to cast it and play around a Daze. So pretty dominating position here for Cory. We've seen Cory come from behind against Shahar. Here, he doesn't need to come from behind. He's so far ahead. He's got a Diabolic Edict in his hand, Liliana the Veil, Tarmogoyf. Looks like Ricky's going to use that Fire Ice on the Deathrite Shaman to make sure it doesn't get active. But now Cory's going to be able to cast that Liliana the Veil.
Yeah,
He drew a
his
second.
So he has, Cory has a Tarmogoyf, a Liliana of the Veil. He's going to be able to take Ricky's last card here. And Cory still with almost a full grip. It's really looking like he's going to take charge of this game and move into the finals.
Yeah,
He discards
Punishing Fire. So insult to
Sure.
injury. That's going to be coming back with the Grove of the Burn Wells. And Ricky Sidher just scoops the cards up. There's nothing he can do. Cory just in too much of a dominating board position there. Unbelievable. 2 games for Cory Teran. Defeats Rug Delver yet again.